yesterday may have been my favorite day of League of Legends that I can ever remember watching since I started back in 2016, 2017. Obviously, that's helped by the fact that we got the perfect result that we could have asked. I asked about this weeks ago. It seemed like Closer just hits that spring, or even, I mean, it'll probably happen again in summer, but just that mid-season slump. And we just felt uncoordinated, things weren't working, and then all of a sudden, 2 weeks left in the regular season comes, and then Closer wakes up, the entire team wakes up, they start playing better together as a team, and now we basically ran like an early playoff gauntlet yesterday. Like, I hope people understand, like, yes, the Immortals win was what it was, but we beat EG twice this weekend, although granted EG is struggling, but we'll talk about that in a second. We beat TSM to help knock them out of playoffs. We beat CLG, who looks good, and we're doing it in a style where, yes, we might lose a tiny bit early. Doublelift has been getting consistently poked out in lanes at level 1 through 3. If we can avoid that, then yeah, things would be a lot better and easier. But our mid to late game macro and team fighting is unbelievable right now. We are making every right decision. Bjergsen is getting caught out sometimes, which can still be a problem, and I hope that is cleaned up a little bit as time goes on. But the way we are playing right now is eerily similar to how Evil Geniuses played last spring. If you remember, it was very much like a get through lane, and our team fighting and macro will just beat people. And that's exactly what's happening right now. We are not losing all that many team fights that we don't get like early picked off on. Like, it seems like the fights that we do lose, where one person is caught out of position, and even then there have been several times this weekend where we've still taken the 4v5s and won. That's big, because that gives you confidence going into every team fight that you can possibly win it, and that is an insane feeling. That is not something as a 100 Thieves fan that you've had in a long time. Like, even last year, or like the years prior, whenever we won our championship, whenever we were second each and every split, it wasn't through like major team fighting. If Closer took over, then great, but like our whole team's team fighting was never like fully this in sync. This is a whole new level for 100 Thieves fans that, quite frankly, we are just, I hope y'all enjoy the ride, because this is part of also what comes to a certain extent with a Doublelift team. Speaking of Doublelift, I want to specifically call out I Will Dominate, Monty, and anybody else that back in week 5, I noted it here, was calling for Doublelift to get dropped and Unforgiven to come in just because Unforgiven was the best ADC in Academy. And I just have to say, I hope you're happily wearing that egg on your face. Like, it is still a consistent thing in League of Legends that I just don't get, of like people just calling for players to get dropped like that and not allowing people the time, like a full split's worth of time, to get their shit together. Clearly, everybody that was scapegoating the coaching change, like, oh, this is just clearly on the surface and isn't going to make a difference, there's bigger problems at hand. Really? Because our drafts seem pretty damn good. Our team atmosphere seems to just be better. Like, I love Koss. By all means, I don't want to disrespect him in any way. But how anybody can now sit here and, if you made that claim back then, not admit that you were wrong is beyond me. Because clearly, we are a night and day different team. And I think it just goes to show maybe Nuke Duck was, or is, more of just a player's coach. Like, does allow the players to do more of what they want and facilitate them along the way, and maybe Koss is more of a systems coach. We have no clue. We probably won't get insight into that for an extended period of time. I don't know if it's just because of personal relationships or what it was, but it annoyed me back whenever I saw people calling for Doublelift to get dropped, and I'm not even a Doublelift stan. Most of you know here, I have criticized the hell out of him for the last 2 years since he was a streamer, and I've gotten a lot of shit from some of his fans, from LS's fans and others, for calling out the toxicity that existed there. But if there's one thing I've always said, it's that I respect Doublelift as a player. He wins and has that clutch factor that nobody else in North America has. Literally none. It's an intangible that you cannot put a number on, other than just the fact, look at the amount he's won. The fact that he hasn't lost a best of 5 since 2016 on a myriad of different teams. Or sorry, he hasn't been knocked out of playoffs since 2016. He lost one best of 5 to Golden Guardians in the double elim format back in 2020. It's clutch factor, and I would give Closer that same clutch factor as we've seen over the course of several splits, but like, it's also difficult whenever he's come second so many times, and Doublelift has been able to cross that finish line, so it's similar but slightly different. Also want to give a massive shout out to Busio and Tenacity, who have just found their role on the team as the meta changed a little bit and have been playing it well. Tenacity, we had gripes early on of his engages with Closer being desynced from the team, and it just felt like every fight this weekend we were on the same page. He knew when to engage. He knew the spots that he had to be at. And it just goes to show, like, the amount of patience that people are willing to give to rookies in League of Legends is freaking non-existent. Because it took, what, 8 weeks? If you go back at the beginning of the split, and yes, I know this was a rocky road, but if you go back and say, yeah, by playoffs, they're going to look pretty damn good. I don't think anybody's going to complain, but because of the way it happened and how reactionary people can be, people just take it to the extremes, and it's like, god damn. I know I'm popping off a little bit more on this episode. I feel like I've earned that right to a certain extent, but yeah, it just feels good. And now we go into next week, next Thursday specifically, a match against FlyQuest, of which I honestly think we stand a chance. Like, obviously, we wanted to avoid Cloud9. We dodged that bullet because I think Cloud9 in a best of 5 is going to be damn near impossible to beat. And granted, we have not beat FlyQuest once this year. Prince has gotten the better of us every time. But I truly feel like we are a different team right now than we were the last 2 times that we played them. And we legitimately stand a chance. I think it goes to 5 games, to be very clear. I think this is going to be a very close series that's going to come down to 1 or 2 plays and maybe a good draft versus a bad one. I hope that we win. My prediction would be 100 Thieves in 5. But yeah, it's just, I cannot wait for this. Playoffs is the most exciting I think it's been in a while. And part of that is due to the fall off of certain teams. But EG, I guess now's probably the best time to talk about them. They will come back once they're back on stage. Like, I'm happy that we knocked them down into the lower bracket, and it is unfortunate for the players that you know, a couple people got COVID and they've been stuck playing from home. But it is night and day difference with EG when they're on stage versus when they're not. And I do not want to face them in a best of 5 where I have to worry about that. So I am very thankful that we will only have to face them if we lose at any point in time. And I pray to God that we don't, because EG in a best of 5 scares me just as much as Cloud9 and FlyQuest. So we'll see. I think I'm now able to say this in this video since a lot of other people have been revealing it as well. This is going to be my first ever split where I actually get to cast a ballot for All Pro and for MVP at the time of recording this at 2 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday. I have not cast my ballot yet. That's the next thing I'm going to do while this video is uploading to YouTube. I have an idea in mind, and I've been obviously putting my thoughts out there for a few weeks now. But I'm also going to split into 2 separate videos. I'm not going to talk about All Pro and MVP in the same video because I feel like it's 2 different conversations entirely. And I will have the All Pro video out on Wednesday this week, and then the MVP video out when MVP is announced. So it'll still be some time for that, but just know I have been taking a lot of time. I take this opportunity very seriously, and my vote will have my logic behind it, and that will all be public for you all. The final thing I want to say to the 100 Thieves fans out there, first and foremost, to those that have started following and watching this content, thank you so much for doing so. I hope you find a home here as a 100 Thieves fan, and I hope this content feels somewhat relatable to you. I saw a lot of people criticizing the broadcast yesterday for not feeling like there's a lack of empathy or like happiness towards 100 Thieves. And I want to say this, I don't think that's the case for the Analyst Lounge and most of the personalities there. I personally saw a lot of excitement from them as they watch 100 Thieves rise up. I know there's been a bad history for 100 Thieves fans of feeling like they're overlooked. It's the cool kid syndrome that existed since 2018 on. We were an outsider looking in, and that's, you know, it is what it is. don't be going into content this week expecting the problem is a lot of people are going to go into this being like, okay, now we get our time that makes up for lost time and we should get basically an entire episode. It's like, no, we'll get 1 or 2 more minutes on us, as we should, because we're the team to talk about this week. But, well, us and Cloud9, because Cloud9 in the All-Pro and MVP discussion, but we should be up there with them in terms of our potential. But don't expect more than what it should be. Like, you can't atone for past sins all the time. Ultimately, I think they'll get still a good bit of time talked about, more so than most others. So, honestly, I wouldn't worry about that. The point that I think a lot of people, I guess the pain point that I think most people are coming from is actually Gabby. And I don't mean to single her out. I want this to be entirely constructive criticism to try and help her, because I felt this yesterday, and I knew where some people were coming from, even if they weren't putting it into words. There were many moments during the cast yesterday, not only of just 100 Thieves games, but Cloud9 or the Cloud9 FlyQuest game, and pretty much the entirety of her cast yesterday, where it just felt like there were these big swinging moments in games, and the cast was still very like monotone. And it lacked emotion, excitement, and empathy. And that was both 400 Thieves and against. Whenever we nearly threw some leads and were giving away some picks as well, you could hear Raz in the background kind of getting a little bit more excited. But like, I need that emotion from Gabby as well. I need it from whatever caster is going to be there. And I think Captain Flowers does a really good job of this. And if you listen to his cast, you'll consistently hear it's like, he'll like joke around and let some things go, and he has that same like raspiness that Gabby does have in like the extremely like end moments or like really hype moments. But it's even in the small things where you can like give that little bit of elevation to feel like the moment is really important, because it is a double kill that can lead to a dragon or a baron is a big snowballing momentum point. And to just keep it that same level head feels like we're really devaluing it. And as a fan, it makes it feel like you're not appreciative of those moments in game. And then looking back, it just feels like, well, okay, well, if everything was mostly like this same even keel, barring a few moments that spiked up that were like really big, you don't feel like you get a full progression of the game. So, again, keeping this entirely constructive criticism, I just say like, identify those small moments in game that can swing things big and like really put emphasis on it. Azale is a color caster or a analyst. I don't know. Yeah, as a color caster, does a really good job of using like different tones in his voice and different vocal inflections, like to really hone that in. And I think he's a great example of just like, even when play-by-play casting, where I know that's harder, just adding that little bit of extra touch that makes it, as a fan, feel like the casting is matching the moment, if that makes sense. That's all I really want to say on that regard. Final comment that I want to address from the community was people were wondering why we played so many tiebreakers on one day. Look, I come from a sports family where we grew up in swim meets every weekend. My cousins and uncle were volleyball families, so you'd be at volleyball tournaments for an entire weekend where you'll go and play one game, then wait 6-7 hours to play another. And it's like a whole team bonding thing. You have to watch what you're eating, watch what you're doing, maintain energy levels. It is a whole process. And I love these things. I guess if people are not familiar with sports, they're probably thinking, oh, why are we forcing the players to do so much? They're not doing all that much. It's one day of this. That's not bad. If you grow up playing any sort of tournament sport, like, you know, like, the 17-18 hour days are the ones that really drag you, and this is nowhere close to that. So nah, these guys will be fine. Imagine going to like a swim meet, having like 4 events over the course of like 6 hours, and then you don't even have like a pool to warm up in. You just have to go right into it. So yeah, these guys, I'm sorry, I don't have empathy for those that are like, oh, it should have been split up. No, I liked it all in one day. Was it harder for, you know, commentators and fans to watch all day? Sure, because people aren't used to it. But as somebody that grew up in that environment, that's what made yesterday so special. It gave me that feeling of like, oh, it's like that Saturday tournament feeling all over again. I loved it. I loved everything about this. Yesterday was great. A 7-0 streak going into our match with FlyQuest. What was y'all's favorite moment? Let me know. I got to get this chopped up, edited, and put out there. So I will see you all on Friday after our game. hopefully we pull out the W.